Hello, everyone. Our next presenter is Porter Knight, and she is from Vermont. As the founder of Productivity Vermont, Porter has been teaching workplace productivity and office organizing strategies, easy for me to say, based on the neuroscience of decision making. I turn it over to you, Porter.
Great. And also, my husband was diagnosed with ALS in 2018, and he did pass away this summer. So I have been in caregiver shoes. So I'm very pleased to be able to share some of the strategies that I use in my work and that I've used personally that I think in a lot of ways helped me navigate the last 3.5 years. And I hope that they will also give you some supports as well. So the topic is resiliency and caregiving. We have a pretty short amount of time together. So I'm going to endeavor to give you 3 actions that you might be able to take to build your resiliency as you caregive in 30 minutes or less. Use the chat feature if you have questions, and I like to be interactive. So certainly as we're going along, if you have questions or thoughts, you can pop them right up in there in the chat. And then as we move from each topic, I will definitely pause and ask for questions. So I will be looking for audience feedback. And I'm interested in your questions. And I'm also really interested in what you hear that's going to make tomorrow better than yesterday for you. So I really hope that each of you will get at least one idea out of these 3 actions that's going to help support you in your journey as a caregiver. So 30 minutes, 3 actions. The first topic is going to be about reclaiming your brain, and we'll spend the most time on that because there's 3 different ideas I'm going to offer there. And then we're going to talk about lowering the bar, which is an amazing professional gift that I'm going to offer to each of you, and saying yes. So first action, reclaim your brain. This is a picture of my feet, and I hope you're laughing. I was when I looked down because I have to tell you that this is not my floor. That's right, ladies and gentlemen, I was not at home last summer when I looked down and saw that I was wearing, yes, 2 different shoes. I was out in public. I was at a store here in our small town of Bristol, Vermont. And it's a very small town where I've lived for several decades and where everybody here knows that I am, in fact, a certified professional organizer. So walking around town wearing 2 different slippers is kind of embarrassing. But, you know, this is what can happen when you've got a lot going on and your brain is really overwhelmed. So I've been there. And even though I think that for the most part, I navigated the last 3.5 years with some semblance of grace, you know, I did walk around sometimes not wearing matching shoes. So the 3 steps that I want to offer that I find in trying to keep your brain together are, first of all, basic brain health. So when I teach workplace productivity and office organizing, which is really a function of decision making, in order to be decisive, you need your brain, and you want your brain to be working at its peak, which you and I know is pretty tough when you're caregiving for somebody. But it's always worth revisiting what those elements are that are going to help your brain function at its optimum performance. So I call these the big 3 for basic brain health. And while it is actually neuroscience, it's not rocket science. And everybody knows exactly what you need for your brain to function well. If I say it's the big 3 and I tell you there's 3 things you need for your brain to work well, you know what they are. And yet, as soon as you become stressed or busy or overwhelmed, it's like boom, 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 those dominoes fall. They're the first things that people give up when they feel stressed and overwhelmed. Does anybody want to log into the chat and take a gander? What do you, Gamble, what do you think? I can't see you, so let's see. Okay, Lori's there. I knew Lori was there and she said sleep. That is, in fact, the very first one. Anybody else? No guesses? Yeah, Donna's going to guess nutrition. Definitely on the list. We need sleep. We need to eat. And a third one? I'll give you all a minute to find that chat box. Yeah. So those are, in fact, the three things: eating well, nutrition, exercise for sure, and sleep. I know that this seems super obvious, but because this is what I do professionally, is teach the neuroscience of decision making, which is the basis for performance and productivity. I like to talk a little bit about why these are the big three. So when we talk about nutrition and eating well, the thing is that your brain is a tiny part of your body as a proportion to the rest of yourself, right? So like 2 to 3% of your body by weight, but your brain actually consumes a vastly disproportionate amount of the nutrition that you take in. So even though it's only 2 to 3% of your body by weight, it consumes 20 to 24% of the nutrition that you take in. That's incredibly disproportionate, right? Like, almost a quarter of the fuel that you're consuming is being burned by those neurons in your brain. And so when we talk about the importance of eating well, it's not just for overall health and energy, but so that you can think, literally think. And it's also true that thinking makes you tired, because when you think hard, when you're really concentrating on serving and supporting, that burns energy even faster. So it's true that thinking makes you tired, and it's true that you need good nutrition, not just for your whole body, but for your brain cells so that you can think. So when I talk about eating well, I mean, this is a huge body of information, but most people pretty much have a sense of it, right? So when I talk about eating well, I say whole foods on a regular basis. Nothing's off limits. There's no absolutes, but the idea is if you're eating whole foods on a regular basis throughout the day, then you're giving your body and your brain the nutrition that it needs for your body and your brain cells to do their cell jobs, whatever they are. And we're focused on your capacity to think so that you can make choices that are going to help you dealing with ALS. So what is a whole food? You look at an apple, you're like, okay, apple, I get it, grew on a tree, I know what that is. That's a whole food. You look at a product and you're like, I'm not really sure what that is. You read the ingredient list and now you're like, wow, I really don't know what that is. That's not a whole food. So you're looking for something that's less processed, more natural, more whole food, and just, don't starve all day and binge. So eating well is critical for your brain to work at its best. And then the next item is exercise. And really what it is here is oxygen. You need to be breathing, but I don't put breathing on my slide because even in my work as a professional organizer, it's not about breathing, right? If people aren't breathing, they're not calling a professional organizer. But it's about the breath, right? So the reason I use exercise here on the slide is that what oxygen does is oxygen is like the garbage collection crew or the hazmat team that circulates through your body via the bloodstream and extracts the waste from the cells that produce it when they metabolize the fuel, right? So you eat so that your cells can do their cell jobs. And as your cells do their cell jobs, they produce waste, and you breathe so that you can collect the waste and get it to the organs that expel it. So breathing is mandatory for expelling waste. What exercise does is it increases the oxygenation of the blood so that you have a higher percentage of oxygen in your blood, which makes you more efficient at expelling waste. And regular exercise produces a more healthy circulatory system, which also makes you more efficient at expelling waste. So we eat so that our cells can do their cell jobs. We want to think well and clearly. We breathe and we exercise so that we can do an efficient job at getting rid of the waste, which also there's a whole raft of research about how cognition improves with exercise. Baseline cognition improves with regular exercise. Each incident of exercise is associated with a spike in cognition. Really overwhelmed, just that quick walk around the house, literally just go out the door and walk around the house and come back, will improve your focus and your capacity to think. And then we have sleep. And I know this is a tough one. It's a tough one for a lot of adults in Western society, period, just because of our jobs and our culture and our lives. And it's really tough when you're caregiving. And so I'm going to tell you what you know, which is that the adult human requires about 8 hours of sleep. And the Harvard Center for Sleep Studies is non-negotiable on this. The adult human requires about 8 hours of sleep. And we don't get enough sleep, or we don't get the consistent 8 hours, then our cognition suffers immensely. Even though caregiving can really challenge that, it's important to keep that in front of you. So this is my ideal. This is what I'm striving for. And also, if for no other reason, so you can be incredibly gentle with yourself when you're not getting it, when you're not getting the sleep and you're having a struggle of a day and you feel like you're completely treading water, or just running in place. And you can say, well, I know that I'm not getting the sleep that I need. So instead of just beating up yourself and being hard on yourself for not being able to perform in the way that you want, either in terms of getting done what you want to get done or doing it with the level of kindness that you want to bring to it, just being nice to yourself and saying a lot of, I'm not getting the sleep that I need. Great question on the chat. Marit saying, what if you just can't turn your brain off from thinking? So what I often suggest, and this comes up again, not with people who are just doing caregiving like we have been, but for the general population. So what I suggest is that you have a pad by your bed, and when your brain has thoughts, you take them out of your head and you put them on the pad, and then you can pat the pad and say, okay, brain, they're there, they're safe. Now we're going to go to sleep. We'll talk about this a little bit more on subsequent slides, the idea that what you want to do is direct your brain to the item of attention. And when you want to go to sleep, you're going to say, now, brain, we're going to go to sleep. And the most important part of that is to keep your brain focused on what you do want instead of allowing it to start ramping up with what you don't want. And I'll talk about that on the next slide. So eat, exercise, and sleep puts your brain in the best place to perform. And even though each of these may be challenging when you're really, really stressed at providing care and also managing the whole rest of your life, keeping them in front of you, it bears repeating. So look for opportunities to incorporate those in a consistent way. Any thoughts, questions, ahas on that before I go on to the next step in Reclaim Your Brain? When I look at the attendee list, it looks like we have a couple dozen people here. So I'm happy to have any of you jump in the chat as we go along. Even if your brain is functioning at its peak, so you've got your rest, you got your exercise, you ate really well, nonetheless, stress happens. And stress happens in all kinds of different ways, not even related to the person living with ALS who's in our life. But definitely as it relates to everything around that experience. What the neuroscience says on this is that our brain responds to a perceived threat exactly the same as it does if that threat is a life-threatening predator, like a tiger. So your brain evolved to respond to threat in a very specific way. And what it does in the face of a threat is it takes the blood away from the prefrontal cortex, which is the thinking part of the brain, and it moves it to the limbic system, which is the part of the brain associated with memory and emotion. And it does that on purpose, and it does it fast. So as soon as you experience anything that your brain thinks is a threat, the blood goes, run away. And now you're in a place which people often describe as like, I just can't think. Because the blood, which is bringing the nutrition and the oxygen, is not in the thinking part of the brain. And if you have a very stressful day, this can be an incredibly depleting experience where you feel like you're just almost in a fog all day long. And there's just, it's so hard to really formulate any type of a thought. What's fascinating is that science has now given us new ways to look at the brain in the decision-making process. And so now we actually have some strategies that we can use to redirect blood flow in the brain. So the key is first to identify the stressor. As soon as you're able to at least name the stress, then you can start to redirect the blood flow in the brain. So this ability to notice is really critical. And it's something that you want to develop as you move forward. But it's actually not that hard, because if we had more time and we could do small group work and you could each share with a partner here at the conference, name 3 things that in the course of a day make you go, oh, people can usually name them pretty quickly. So what I want to invite you to do is to think about what are the things that cause me stress? What are the things I experience as stressors? Because they can be different for all of us. And once you've identified it, then you'll be more likely to notice it tomorrow when it comes up. And when it comes up, you can say, there's a tiger. That's a stressor. And as soon as you name it, slap a label on it, the blood that's going, run away, goes, what? Somebody say something, who spoke? So the experience is called metacognition or meta-narration, where we name the experience, and by naming it, we actually transform the experience. So once you've stopped the blood from fleeing from the prefrontal cortex, what we want to do is turn it around and move it back up to the thinking part of the brain. And the way to do that is to articulate choice. And again, there's a lot of neuroscience behind this, but briefly, the reason is that when we articulate our capacity to act, as in I choose to, or I am going to, and you name an action, a verb, an action verb, something you're going to do, blood goes to the prefrontal cortex because that's the part of the brain associated with executive function and action. And so whenever you name your ability to act or your intent to act, blood's like, well, we better go up front because she's going to do something now. So blood goes up front in response to your articulation of action. So stressor occurs. Let's say that's the person living with ALS is having a scary experience. And you say to yourself or out loud, like, there's a tiger, there's a stressor, because you're worried about this person that you care about. And then the next thing is, what am I going to do? Now, when you parse this out, this may not be exactly, or it may not be that different than the way you would have gone anyway, except usually what happens is we rush in to solve the situation or to take action without naming our capacity or autonomy to act. And it turns out that that methodological approach actually has a impact impact on the way brains function. So if you say to yourself or out loud, like, that's a stressful scenario, and then you say, I choose to, or I am going to, and then whatever it is, I'm going to call the doctor, I'm going to get the machine, I'm going to just stand and hold his hand. Whatever you articulate as your action, it moves blood back up front. So very quick synopsis of the neuroscience of how that works, but blood goes away from the prefrontal cortex in response to a perceived threat. You can redirect it to the prefrontal cortex by articulating your capacity to act. And that impacts not just the blood flow, but also the production of neurotransmitters, which is to say, when blood goes away from the thinking part of the brain, we produce adrenaline and cortisol, which are correlated with all kinds of ill health. When we redirect blood to the front of the brain through choice, we experience a rush of dopamine and serotonin. Everybody's know what dopamine is, right? Dopamine is the drug that makes you feel happy. And your brain produces that when you articulate your capacity to choose action and move blood to the front of the brain. So that's step 2 in reclaim your brain. So first, we're going to fuel our brain. Then we're going to name the stressors. And when they happen, we're going to choose action in the face of that stressor. And mindful moments and meditation are a way to help you build your capacity to choose action. So what mindfulness does, or what meditation does, is it increases the space between synapse or between stimulus and response. So it gives you more space to make a choice. Again, huge amount of research that I'm dumping on you in a very short time period here. But mindfulness, I describe as sort of like, if you have a Venn diagram, mindfulness is the big circle that is noticing without judgment, or paying attention without getting attached. Meditation is a subset of that Venn diagram. So mindfulness is noticing without judgment. Meditation is explicitly paying attention. That's actually what meditation is. Meditation is a practice at paying attention. So I make a distinction between mindful moments, just opportunities throughout the day to kind of put yourself back in your own skin. So the first image on the slide here is a little wheel. It's what you see when your computer is buffering, or when you're trying to download a movie, and it's that downloading circle. I call it the Microsoft wheel of meditation. Usually when we get that buffering, and I use this metaphorically because sometimes it happens in life when we're trying to do something, but there's something that's preventing us from doing it as quickly as we want. And so we're stressed because we're trying to get it done, but it's taking longer than we. But I introduce that as a mindful moment so that we can say, hey, every time that happens, I'm going to remind myself to just be like, hey, just get back in my own skin. And so maybe you just watch how many times it goes around. 1, 2, 3. Or maybe you breathe in and breathe out. Or maybe when you see that, you're going to decide that the mindful moment you're going to choose is to feel the sensation of your shirt on your shoulders. And if I stop talking for a minute, when I say feel the sensation of the shirt on your shoulders, most of you can kind of be like, yeah, I feel that. And anytime that we stop for a moment, I call it getting off the hamster wheel and just stop and notice, blood flow changes in your brain. It's called direct attention instead of default attention. And it's like a reset. So putting yourself back in your own skin. The Microsoft wheel of meditation, a stoplight, these are opportunities for mindful moments. Just a moment where you say, stop, all right, regroup, and now we're back. That's it. It's not a big deal. We talk about meditation, it is a little bit more of a commitment because meditation isn't something that you do in the face of a stressor or sort of on the spur of the moment. Typically, meditation is a practice that you engage in consistently on a regular basis. But when I teach meditation, and again, to be clear, I teach it because I'm teaching people how to be more productive in the workplace, how to better attend to and focus on their work, and by corollary, how to better resist distraction from the things that might pull them away from their work. So meditation as a secular practice is a way to build your capacity to pay attention. And that's because what meditation does as a practice at paying attention is it strengthens the synapse of a particular part of the prefrontal cortex called the anterior cingulate, which is the spotlight of attention. And so this part of the brain is responsible for mediating what you attend to. And so when you practice paying attention, you strengthen the connection of that part of the brain to the rest of the brain. And just like when you practice playing the piano or you practice hitting a baseball, you get better at the neural synapses associated with hitting the ball or playing the keys. If you practice paying attention, you strengthen the neural synapses associated with paying attention. And so the practice of meditation that I teach is a very basic, simple sitting meditation, which requires only that you decide to meditate, decide how long to meditate. You could do a minute. It doesn't have to be an hour-long experience. There does not need to be incense involved. You don't need special music. You don't need any guidance. You don't need to put your body in a funny position or sit on a funny stool. All you need is to decide to meditate, decide how long you want to meditate. Then you have to decide what to pay attention to. Typically in a meditation practice, people will attend to the breath. There's no special reason for that. You're not trying to change it, make it better, make it different, make it deeper. All you're doing is paying attention to it because it's there. And when you get distracted during the course of your meditation, because you will, and that is in fact the practice, is that when you get distracted, then you notice, and then you gently escort your attention back to the item of attention. And if your item of attention is breath, it's still there. So it's an easy thing to choose. But you don't have to choose that. And some people feel anxious about paying attention to their breath, so choose something else. When I teach meditation, I'm usually in a workplace setting. So we'll often choose the heating, air conditioning, ventilation system because they're usually loud in an office. If you're sitting at home and you have a computer in front of you right now, if we did a moment's meditation, you would probably hear the hum of the computer, or you might hear noise. So you can attend to the breath, you can attend to a sound, you can attend to a visual. So you could close your eyes and picture a candle flame, or you could keep your eyes open and stare at, the letter B.
Well, hello, everyone. I think we lost Porter. So, Porter, we cannot hear you. Hopefully, you can jump back on. Yeah, she's going to log out and back in. So let's pause that for a second. I don't know about all of you, but I find this fascinating. This is a wonderful conversation. I'm learning a lot. I personally have wanted to, oh, there you are.
Hey, here I am.
Okay. I will shut up and you can keep on going.
Not at all. I was actually kind of interested to hear what you were personally interested in doing.
I was just thinking about, meditation is something that I've always wanted to get into, and I just haven't been able to do it. But I love the idea of sitting and listening to a sound because I never had thought about doing that.
Yeah. So a simple sitting meditation, you're going to decide to meditate, decide how long to meditate, decide what you're going to attend to, and then you attend to it for that period of time. The thing about meditation is that you cannot do it wrong. For 1 minute and you get distracted 1,000 times, that was a great meditation. And if you sit for a minute and you get distracted twice, that was a great meditation. It's a practice. It's just a practice at paying attention. And so what I recommend is that people practice on a regular basis. 1 minute is great. If you do a minute a day and it starts to feel good, you can dial it up to 3 down the road. I used to do 9 minutes because 10 minutes sounded like a lot, double digits and all that. But a number of years ago, I read that 50-year-old women who meditated for 15 minutes a day had the same brain matter, the same amount of gray matter as 25-year-old women. And this is not typical. We generally lose gray matter as we age. And I was like, I want that. So I dialed it all the way up to 15 minutes a day. Meditation has a whole lot of benefits. I generally teach it because of its capacity to increase your ability to perform and to focus and to pay attention in a workplace setting. But for our purposes as caregivers, one of the greatest values of meditation is its ability to bring you to a place of equanimity. So what meditation does, because it mediates your attention, is, as I said, it increases your capacity to make a conscious choice between stimulus and response. And so with a regular meditation practice, you have the ability to notice something happening without getting attached to it and to say, that happened. And in a longer or more one-on-one conversation, I can share with you the myriad ways during the course of 3.5 years of caregiving when things happened that might otherwise be the kind of thing that would make you, drop your head in your hand or scream or swear or, a bunch of other things. And I was able to say, like, that happened. What am I going to do? And then make a choice and move forward. So I can't stress it enough. I honestly think that this is the part that got me through the last 3.5 years. And I hope it's something that you'll feel empowered to attempt. Even a tiny practice is a start. And I think 1 minute is something that we can treat ourselves to. I know that we hear a lot about self-care, and I've heard other caregivers say, if anybody else tells me I need to practice self-care, I'm going to punch them in the face. So I want to offer this as something that's more tangible, but really, really within reach for most of us. So the first strategy, Reclaim Your Brain, is about don't lose sight of the things that you can do for basic brain health. Even when it's hard and you're not able to do them to the extent that you want, try to eat well and get a little bit of exercise and get as much sleep as you can consistently. Name the stressors and identify what you can do as a choice in the face of them, and take advantage of mindful moments, those things that make you go, and say, wait, when that happens, I'm going to go, and consider a meditation practice. And I have a handout on that, which I can share with Lori and Amber and Karen, and they can pass them out to anybody who wants them. The other steps, though, the next action that I want to invite you to do is to lower the bar. And this is a really, really big one. And I think what's super important as caregivers is for us to let ourselves way, way, way off the hook for a bunch of things that we wouldn't normally let ourselves off the hook for. So lower the bar. If you want to be able to move forward, you have to be able to get over the bar. And if all of the bars are up here, that's impossible. And when we weren't caring, that might have been possible, right? The standards that you had for everything from housekeeping to keeping in touch to I don't know what you name the.
So we've lost Porter again. We have a very cute picture, though. That's really nice of the beagle jumping over the obstacle. But I'm sure that Porter is going to be jumping back on again. this is just fascinating. It makes me want to give meditation a try again. There she is.
I should give you all a meditation practice for every time I disappear. It's like a trick. Anyway, so lower the bar, let yourself off the hook. That's my next one. I'll go ahead and do the last one in case Accelervents kicks me out again, but then we can take some questions if there are any. My last tip is about saying yes. And when my husband was diagnosed with ALS in October of 2018, I was actually in my second month of 6 months of chemo following a breast cancer diagnosis. And when I got breast cancer, my doctor actually said to me, Porter, one thing you need to know is that when people offer to help, the answer is yes, always, always and unequivocally yes. And the mastectomy was not a big deal. The chemo weekly was going fine. I was doing all right. And then Dave got his diagnosis, and I put a big yes up on my desk. And oftentimes, especially early in the diagnosis, people would do to help, and I didn't really know. It was too much for me to be able to figure out what I even needed them to do. And so I just started telling people, yes, you can definitely help. I don't know how. Figure something out. Let me know. Thank you. And people were pretty creative, and they came up with lots of ideas. So I encourage you to put a big yes up for yourself and let people help. People don't know what to do, and they want to be involved. And so when they say, what can I do to help? Just turn it back around and say, I would love for you to help. I don't know what I need. Why don't you give me a list of ideas, things that you think you could do? So that's my last tip for you, is just say yes. So reclaim your brain, lower the bar, just say yes. Yeah, I don't think I was even showing my screen there. So any thoughts, questions, ahas? You've been a very quiet audience. I'm going to trust that you're actually out there. I'm glad that Donna and Maurette are. Any questions?
I think Carol just commented that she loves this, and it is so true.
Thanks, Carol. I hope that it helps.
I don't see any other questions coming. I found this fascinating. I've already said this to the attendees, but I just find, this is so applicable to all of us.
Yeah. That's why I wanted to share it with this group, because it's what I do for a living, is share this information in a setting that has to do with work performance at work. And people hear it at work and they're like, oh, I can't wait to go tell this to my kids or to share this with my partner, because it's just about the human condition, and it's very useful. So Lori says, what do we do? How do we remind ourselves when nobody's there to remind us? So there's an experience in psychology called priming, which is that once you've introduced an idea to your brain, then it'll come up again. Like if you're thinking of buying a Toyota Tacoma, then all of a sudden you see them everywhere. Everyone has a Toyota Tacoma. Or if you're thinking about getting pregnant, all of a sudden you see things about babies everywhere. And so just having heard this information, I don't think you need to set the bar very high. I think that for each person who heard it, there's going to be something that will resonate. And the next time they find themselves getting, they might think, oh, that's a tiger. And then they might think, oh, what do I want to do? So I don't think that you need to study or learn it in that way. I think that just let it wash over, and what sticks will stick. I think a lot of these ideas will prime. And also, even though I'm talking about the neuroscience behind these experiences, I think a lot of people, they shake their head and they say, oh, that sounds familiar. So I'm describing the experience that is familiar to us in the human condition. I'm just telling you what's going on neurologically, what happens to cause that or in response to that. And now when it happens, now you have that information so you can choose a different way to proceed.
I think that's all of the questions, and we're down to the last 15 seconds. So I'm going to wrap this up, and I'm going to say thank you so much, Porter. This was incredible, and I think many people are finding this very helpful. So thank you. And then you and I are going to jump to the next session. So I will see you at the next session.
Great. Thanks,
Okay,
everybody. Good
thank
luck.
you.